Mike Pompeo decided to come out the other day and try to sell us on Iraq 2.0 by claiming that Iran was working with Al Qaeda in the region somehow. Now, I don't know how stupid the average American actually is, but it's kind of apparent that how stupid Mike Pompeo thinks the average American is. But he might be right. The average American might not realize that Iran is a Shia nation. They might not realize that Al Qaeda is a Sunni operation. They might not realize that there's basically no chance whatsoever that these two groups would ever fight alongside each other. And in fact, they have actually fought against each other. You might not know this, but there was an attack on the Iranian parliament building in Tehran not too long ago. That was carried out by Al Qaeda, because Al Qaeda is Sunni and Iran is Shia. And if you don't know anything about the Sunni and the Shia, they actually they're trying to wipe each other off of the face of the earth so they can be the only Muslims left, each group. But yeah, Mike Pompeo decided to come out and try to sell this the other day. And of course, almost immediately, people came out and like, no sir, this actually is not true. This is not true. And it's not true. I'm glad that they actually did bother to come out and tell everybody, this is a lie. This is a lie. Let's go ahead and pause that. Can't. Okay, fine. Just don't load. Anyway, this guy is trying to say that the proof that Iran and Al Qaeda are actually joint operators is that there have been a handful of marriages in Iran between Iranian Persians and people who are associated with Al Qaeda. Like a handful of them. I hate to break this to y'all, America, but that probably happens here too. And that does not mean that the United States is automatically working with Al Qaeda, because there are marriages to people affiliated with Al Qaeda, like by the fifth person down the line, getting married in America. Now, what I will say is that it is difficult to sell this position when we actually are working with Al Qaeda. I'm not talking about, hey, there's some marriages going on in the United States. We're actually working with Al Qaeda. Working with them against Shia militias because they're natural enemies. I mean, we can look at Syria, for example, where this article does not go fully in depth, but I'm amazed that both of the articles that I found just looking about the link between the United States and Al Qaeda, they both came from Fox News. Both came from Fox News. Which I guess shouldn't be so surprising, because it was during the Obama administration that we started helping these guys. So finally, the conservatives decided to be conservatives. But yeah, you can look at Syria, you can look at Yemen, where we're unofficially helping Al Qaeda in Yemen. Unofficially. And the beginning of this article actually talks about, oh yeah, we have decisive victories that drove Al Qaeda militants from their strongholds in Yemen, yada 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 yada. But then you come down here and you're going to find different parts where it's talking about, oh yeah, well, I mean, the coalition just kind of hires. There it is. Coalition-backed militias actively recruit Al-Qaeda militants or those who were recently members because they're considered exceptional fighters. So in this exact same article that we're claiming that we are wiping out Al-Qaeda in Yemen, we are also admitting that we are hiring Al-Qaeda operatives as mercenaries in Yemen. And let's just go back to Syria for a minute, because Syria is a quagmire and a half. Syria, back under the Obama administration, when he was pushing the Arab Spring, which was probably the most detrimental foreign policy that the United States has ever had, and that's really saying something. That's really saying something, y'all. The United States has done a lot of really messed up stuff in the world before, but we have done nothing compared to the Arab Spring. Nothing. As soon as the Arab Spring happened, militant groups started taking over every single country that we were involved in. Look at Libya. Look at Libya and what we did there. Anyway, Syria, when we started out, we had two different operating forces in Syria that we were working with. The CIA, of course, the agency, was supporting the Islamic State, whereas the Pentagon was directly supporting al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda in Syria. It was only after that little video came out, you guys remember that video of the Islamic State commander, I think, cutting the heart out of one of his enemies and eating it? That's when public opinion in America changed about Islamic State. Up until that point, we were kind of like, maybe they're not so bad. But, yeah, they ended up being pretty dang bad. But the thing is, even after that video came out, we continued to fund them through the agency for years. Years after that video came out. It got to the point that CIA-backed rebels in Syria were fighting against Pentagon-backed rebels in Syria, and they both were branches of Al-Qaeda. Two separate branches of Al-Qaeda being funded by two separate branches of the American intelligentsia fighting each other for power in Syria.